สู่รายการตอบโจทย์กับผมชัยรัตน์ ถมยานะครับในช่วงนี้เราจะมาพูดคุยกับผู้เชี่ยวชาญในเรื่องความสัมพันธ์ระหว่างไทยกับสหรัฐซึ่งความสัมพันธ์ระหว่างไทยกับสหรัฐก็จะครบ180 ปีในปีหน้านี้แล้วนะครับแต่ว่าหลายๆคนนั้นก็ตั้งข้อสังเกตว่าที่ผ่านมาความสัมพันธ์ระหว่างไทยกับสหรัฐนั้นอ่อนแอลงไปหรือไม่ควรจะมีการดำเนินมาตรการใดๆนะครับเพื่อจะเสริมสร้างความแข็งแกร่งระหว่างไทยกับสหรัฐโดยเฉพาะอย่างยิ่งตอนนี้มีประเด็นร้อนในเรื่องของการที่กองทัพสหรัฐจะมาขอใช้ฐานทัพอุตภเปานะครับในการที่จะเป็นฐานในการช่วยเหลือทางด้านมนุษยธรรมในการที่จะเกิดเหตุภัยพิบัติขึ้นในภูมิภาคแล้วก็วันนี้ผมมาอยู่กับดร.แคทธารีน ดาวปิโนนะครับซึ่งเป็นผู้เชี่ยวชาญในเรื่องความสัมพันธ์ระหว่างไทยกับสหรัฐนะครับท่านเคยเป็นผู้ช่วยเป็นรองผู้ช่วยนะครับรัฐมนตรีต่างประเทศสหรัฐในสมัยของท่านประธานาธิบดีคลินตันนะครับแล้วก็ตอนนี้ท่านเป็นอาจารย์อยู่ที่วิทยาลัยซิมมอนส์แล้วก็เป็นอาจารย์อยู่ที่ศูนย์การศึกษาระหว่างประเทศมหาวิทยาลัยจอห์นฮอปกินส์ในวอชิงตันดีซีมาร่วมรายการกับเราในวันนี้ครับ So Dr. Dalpino, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
You just present the report about the old alliance in the new century, reinvigorating the U.S.-Thailand alliance. So when you use the reinvigorate, it means that the relations between Thailand and U.S. is fading or weaker in the recent years?
I think that they were stagnant in recent years. And there are a number of reasons for this. And one of them is that both countries have been inwardly focused. The United States because of an economic crisis, and Thailand with its political situation. And also, the United States and Thailand both for several years have been in a position of broadening their foreign relations, particularly in Asia. Thailand has a wide array of foreign relations, much more than when the United States and Thailand were in an alliance during the Vietnam War, because that was the Cold War. But the United States also now has new relations or improved or strengthened relations with countries like Indonesia, with Myanmar with the opening. And so I think it's time for a look at the alliance and to find ways to refashion it and to renew it, I would say, for the 21st century.
But Thailand is one of the countries in Asia that is a treaty alliance,
yes,
apart from South Korea, Japan, and the Philippines.
Yes.
So when you compare to other countries, what difference between the relation between U.S. and Thailand?
Well, we have 5 treaty allies in the region: Japan, South Korea, Thailand, the Philippines, and Australia. And of these 2, Thailand and Australia, there is no immediate threat that the alliance, no central major security threat that the alliance is trying to address. Obviously, with Japan, there are continued Cold War tensions. With South Korea on the peninsula, that is a situation that is considered to have serious security threats. With the U.S.-Philippine alliance, it's now focused somewhat on the South China Sea and on recent tensions between the Philippines and China in the South China Sea, although for several years before that, it was focused on Mindanao and, you know, the training base and some of the groups in Mindanao. Thailand really is in a region now and is very much at peace for the most part with its neighbors. And so there is not that central driving security threat that formed the alliance with the U.S.-Vietnam War.
But when you talk about alliance, maybe the perception between Thailand and U.S. is different about being alliance.
Yes.
Maybe for U.S., maybe thinking about security in the region, but maybe for the Thai, maybe expect more of the U.S. When the time we have crisis, maybe we expect U.S. to come in and help us.
Yes, yeah.
So,
I think both sides think that at different times, but it's true that the alliance probably for the United States in recent years has meant the security relationship. And if you talk to many Thai people, the alliance has meant the broader relationship. And that was really the case during the Cold War, during the Vietnam War era, because everything was seen as supporting anti-communism. You needed a strong economic system, and you needed economic development as a hedge against communism. You needed a strong military. There needed to be strong bonds between the United States and Thailand in order to fight communism. And so everything fed into the alliance. That's really no longer the case. We have more separate parts of the relationship. And we saw this particularly at times, for example, in the late 1980s with trade. But we are a treaty ally, and that implies not only responsibility, it also implies privilege. And so I think that it's a good thing for the United States to look at the alliance as well, to think about shoring up some parts of the relationship to ensure that the alliance goes forward. Another difference in the alliances is that the U.S.-Thailand alliance is based on precedent, is based on historic understanding, and the United States has, as Thailand, its oldest treaty ally in Asia, which even predates the agreement that we made in Japan, in the 19th century. But in contrast to Japan and South Korea, where we have a status of forces agreement, and the Philippines, where we have a visiting forces agreement, there's no regular mechanism that requires that the two sides re-examine the alliance, renegotiate the alliance, and therefore no regular mechanisms for the publics of both countries to express how they feel about the alliance. And so it takes a little bit of extra effort, I think, to keep that understanding and that precedent going. But it also is maybe a little bit easier to let it go sometimes too, because it is more of a historic precedent.
But do you think that Thailand needs some like that kind of mechanism for shaping up the relation between U.S. and Thailand in the future?
I don't think so, actually. I don't think that the U.S.-Thailand alliance is headed for a status of forces agreement. I think that would, I don't know how well that would be received in Thailand. I don't even know if it's necessary. I think that we have on a daily basis fairly good cooperation. I think where the lack of attention has been probably has been at the top, and so I think we need to sort of shore it up at the top. But I don't think that the alliance, if you begin to negotiate these things, it might actually make things more difficult. I think that the U.S.-Thailand alliance is unique, and I think it needs to stay unique. It just needs to be strengthened.
And now you have China. China is
Now we
coming
have
into
China.
the influence in the region.
Yes,
So it's going to change the pattern or whatever the format between Thailand and U.S. relation.
Well, I think it's already been doing that for some years. I don't think it's something that we should think of as a future, factor. I think it's been doing that for a number of years. And again, as I said, both Thailand has diversified its foreign relations, which is very natural for Thailand historically. That's one of the ways that Thailand prevented ever being colonized by European powers. The United States now has relations with its former adversaries. In the Vietnam War, we did not have relations with China. We didn't have relations with what was then North Vietnam, and now, of course, is unified Vietnam. So both sides are doing some balancing. But I think that both sides still see a utility. At least I hope that Thailand still sees a utility. I know that the United States does. But it's necessary to modernize the alliance, and particularly because you have younger generations on both sides that weren't alive during the Vietnam War. And therefore, the old rationale for the alliance is not necessarily one that is still valid for them.
And now we have a very hot topic about using Utapao as a permanent center for humanitarian when they have disaster.
Yes.
And also NASA want to use it as a meteorological
Yes.
center.
Yeah.
So why is it happening now? Is it sudden or the plan for a long time for that?
I don't know anything about the NASA. I know nothing about space or NASA or whether. The idea of using Utapao as a center for humanitarian and disaster relief is actually not new. My understanding from both sides, from both the Thai side and the American side, is that the two countries have been under discussion about this for some time, and that these discussions have not been concluded at all. I think that the idea would be simply to regularize an arrangement that has been ongoing for some time and has worked fairly well. In the 2004 tsunami, the United States asked the Thai government if they could use Utapao as a hub for their regional relief. Singapore and Kuala Lumpur were overwhelmed in terms of their airports. At that point in time, Indonesia was not going to let foreign troops go into Aceh and had only to operate from the ships. And so Thailand very graciously agreed to let the United States use Utapao. The United States troops were there for 1 month and then they left. And this is an example of what they call flexible basing, which is using a partner's base for a specific purpose. But at the heart of flexible basing and at the heart of the U.S.-Thailand alliance is joint agreement. And so this is not something that the United States would seek to do without permission from the Thai government or would be able to, but it would be for a purpose, for a common purpose. Obviously, it obviously benefited Thailand as well as all of Southeast Asia to have disaster relief come in. And I think that this is going to become increasingly an issue because we're all faced with greater natural disasters. Thailand obviously had very severe floods last year, earthquake in Japan, earthquake before that in China, the tsunami in 2004. But even in the United States, last year we had terrible tornadoes. And even in Washington, D.C. last August, we had an earthquake. And we don't have earthquakes in Washington.
Right.
So clearly the weather is changing, and I think that this is something that we're finding that, that cooperation on disaster relief and humanitarian assistance is going to have to become the norm around the world. And I think this is an opportunity to use the U.S.-Thailand alliance for a very benign purpose.
But in the current political situation in Thailand, that's very sensitive. Everything can be taken, politicized.
Of course.
Even this one that I don't use, the Uttar Council. In the move from U.S., should U.S. be careful to do something like this?
Absolutely. And as another feature, I would say, of the alliance is that the Thai political system is very different than the way it was during the Vietnam War. And domestic opinion counts a lot. This is another reason, I think, to have more dialogue on the alliance, is so that the younger generations of the Thai public understand the relationship between the United States and Thailand. I actually think that this was not an issue that had a very high profile until General Dempsey visited Thailand, and because his visit was high profile, the discussions that have been taking place for some time suddenly became news. But I think that this is longer going.